So tonight we've come together in a more maybe informal way just to talk about Dhamma. As most of you know already, I think, myself, Venerable Dhammawitiko, travelled here from Melbourne, Australia. It's an opportunity to visit some old friends and meet new friends in the Dhamma. Some friends are a little bit struggling with aging, sick bodies, aging bodies, so come to give support and help in the way of Dhamma. Others are just interested to hear about what the Buddha taught and hear about how to practice the Buddhist teachings. So we give whatever support and help we can in that way. So just a short visit, but very happy to be here with you. Sharing the Dhamma is an important part of Buddhist practice. Sharing, but often it's a two-way thing. There's the listening or reading of teachings, but then also asking questions and seeking out advice and information is also important. When you begin practicing, you need teachers and people we call Kalyana Mitta, true friends, Dhamma friends, good friends. Because we don't know so much when we begin the practice. We come into the Dhamma, whatever age and whatever background, you've got to start somewhere, but you start from a place where you don't really know. So you need to listen to those who are more experienced and who will guide you in a good way. Like a Kalyana Mitta could be a monk or a nun, could be a lay person who's more experienced in the practice. But it's somebody who always encourages you to go in a good way for your benefit. But it doesn't mean to say always that they'll teach you or tell you things that you want to hear or would like to hear, because sometimes teachers and people who understand the Dhamma better than us, they know something that we don't, and they know that something may be good for us even though we don't yet see that. So for example, when Ajahn Sumedho, who was the first foreign monk to go and live with Luang Por Chah, my teacher, went to his monastery, one of the first things Luang Por Chah said to Ajahn Sumedho was, "You're welcome to live here, but I'm not going to spoil you. I'm not going to give you special treatment. You'll have to practice the same as the other monks, follow the same routine, keep the same rules, eat the same food," which may not have been what he wanted to hear, because most of the foreign monks, when they go to Thailand, they find it a little bit challenging at first because of the climate, the food, the lifestyle of a monk in the jungle in Thailand wasn't so easy necessarily. So when someone says, "Well, I'm not going to do anything special for you," and they just kind of say it directly like that, it's like, oh no, maybe that might be your reaction. But that's actually following in what the Buddha said as well. The Buddha, as a teacher, he also said that he wasn't going to spoil his students by just saying what they wanted to hear, being kind and always sort of just agreeing with them or not pushing them very hard. Just like a parent. A parent, when you bring up kids, you don't really want to spoil them all the time. Sometimes you do, when they need it, when they need extra help, or they've had some suffering, or it's their birthday or something, or you might spoil them and give them what they want perhaps. But if you give somebody what they want all the time, there's many lessons they don't learn, aren't they? And part of the Dhamma practice is learning to train yourself to abandon what we call negative emotions, negative states of mind, mental defilements, rooted in greed, anger, delusion, and to do that, you sometimes have to say no to a certain way of thinking, or recognize a certain way of thinking is going to cause you suffering, and then be willing to let it go or abandon it. And it might be part of your mind that really wants to hold on to that way of thinking, that reaction, that desire, that what we call attachment. You've probably all heard of the sort of the catchphrase, Buddhists, we practice letting go of attachment. But this is what it means. It means letting go of the attachment, the clinging to ways of thinking, views, beliefs, ways of behavior that are actually causing us suffering. But the reason we need to let go is because when you're attached, you're often not seeing what you're doing in the mind. And that's where attachment takes place. It's a mental thing. Although it may come out in your behavior on the outside, it's a mental thing. And to recognize attachment, you have to get your mind to a point where it's kind of in a calm, unbiased, objective state. So you can recognize attachment or clinging for what it is. And that's one way Ajahn Chah used to talk about it, is that, you know, we suffer because we're attached. If you want to know where your suffering has come from, look at the attachments, look for the attachment. Because half the time we just don't see our attachments. They're habitual ways of thinking and doing things. You know, we're creatures of habit, human beings, and some of our habits are quite good, but some are not. And some of them are really stubborn and really deeply ingrained. Even when you know they're bad for you, you still don't want to give up. Right? We've all got a relative who probably smoked too many cigarettes, even to the point where their lungs were just kind of blank and not working anymore. And they still won't give up, even though it's killing them and they know it's killing them. There's just one example. It could be a habit like that, or it could just be a habit like, you know, we were talking about earlier. We get angry. And if you're calm and rational and you talk in a situation like this and you say, is anger a good thing? You know, everyone would say, no, anger is not a good thing. It's miserable when you're angry, you're unhappy. Everyone can agree with that. But then when it happens, when something triggers your anger, oh, you forget. Go back to the attachment, back to the bad habits, and you're angry, or you're worried, or you have some selfish desire that's really filling your mind, whatever. So that's part of the problem. We don't recognize attachment as the cause of suffering. So Ajahn Chah used to say, well, look for the attachment. And if, you know, we'd say he was a really good teacher of Buddhism because he would help people to see their own attachments, get them to that point where they could see and know their own mind a bit better. And that's not an easy skill to have. It's based on knowing your own mind. If you know your own mind, then maybe you can also point out things to other people because you know your own mind very well. And the Buddha was the same. You know, he really understood the human mind and could explain well why people suffer, why they fall into suffering, what the process is, but also what the solution is. Sometimes even the Buddha would say, all I teach is about suffering and the end of suffering. Just to keep things really simple. Nobody likes the idea of suffering, pain, discomfort in any form, physical or mental. But the Buddha didn't just teach that there is suffering in life, he also taught the way out of suffering, the end of suffering. Another way he'd talk about it is he'd say, we suffer because we are thinking wrongly and we attach to those wrong thoughts. I think when you use the word wrong, you often think of, you know, like a kid being naughty and doing something wrong, breaking a rule, or doing something they shouldn't. But when we say wrong thinking in Buddhism, it's a more general term. It just means something, thinking in a way that will lead on to unskillful action, whether just more negative thought or speech or action, physical action, that will lead to suffering. That's the kind of definition. Any action that will lead to suffering, you might say, is wrong action. But all our actions come originally from an intention. You have the intention. So if you're angry, there's an intention there. You're not happy about something. And maybe it's, first of all, it's just a view or a belief is challenged. So you think something is right, and then somebody else talks differently, expresses a different opinion, or does something in a different way than you, and so they're wrong. And then anger is triggered because you're not getting what you want. Someone else is not giving you what you want, not doing things according to your view, your way. So anger is triggered. But of course we don't really know other people's minds very well, what their kind of rules and beliefs are. So it's very easy to trigger anger in another person, isn't it? You really don't know what they're thinking half the time, or most of the time. You don't know their background, what's happening to them. So sometimes, you might live with someone, but still you don't really know what's going on in their mind, how they feel, unless they tell you. And often we don't tell each other until the last minute, and that's when we're angry, and then they're angry. But the build-up and what was going on the last 6 months or whatever, you don't really know. You only know at the end of it, the end of the whole story. And that's another problem, isn't it? Attachment comes up very quick, like a fire. Suddenly you're on fire and you know it hurts, but the build-up and what led up to that, maybe you don't know, you weren't aware of. The owner of those thoughts or those words or the angry state of mind doesn't know, and the one on the receiving end doesn't know. It's the story of most sort of married couples' life, isn't it? I don't know why he's angry. I don't know why she's angry. Where did it come from? It's a mystery. Or it could be work colleagues. You go into the workplace and there'll be somebody who's always finding fault with you. You're doing this wrong, that wrong. As far as you know, you've done everything correctly according to your job description and according to the way the company runs. You're doing it all fine, but still they're angry with you and upset. Life is like that. It seems like a mystery at first, but the Buddha was encouraging us to investigate. And how do you investigate? Well, you have to start getting in touch with your own mind. That's all you can do, really. You can guess at other people's state of mind and guess what they're thinking and why they do things. And some of your guesses may be correct, but really where you can know for yourself is your own mind. And that's why Buddhism encourages us to come back to our own mind, our own actions, our own self all the time. So that's what you can really know, isn't it? Like as you're sitting here listening to me, you can know how your body is feeling. Maybe it's a Friday night, end of the week, later on now, so maybe you're feeling tired, sleepy, or just a bit achy from the week's work or the day's work. Maybe something happened today that keeps coming up in your thinking. Maybe if you had an argument with anyone today, I guarantee that will come up sooner or later in your thinking. If you have an argument with someone, it's very difficult to just drop it. You remember what they've said, what you said, or what you should have said, etc. Or if something very good happened also, you might be thinking of that. Oh, I'm so happy this thing happened today, this event, or something that went really well. Maybe you did a job of work and it was completed and it was successful and everyone was happy with it. It can be both things, good and bad. But this will be coming up, and you can know that, what you're thinking about the day that's gone by, or things that happen. Sometimes we remember and things that happened last year and they come up in our mind at certain times and we start thinking about them. Or it could just be in this present moment, maybe just thinking, oh, you like something or you don't like something, this is happening, that's happening, curious, what's this, what's that. All of this can be known though, because you're here, you've got a mind, you can be aware, you can know things, you can understand things about yourself, right here, right now. So a large part of Buddhist practice is practicing doing that well, getting to know yourself. One of Ajahn Chah's favourite phrases from the Buddha that he would recite over and over again is Atta hi atta no nato. Be a refuge to yourself, meaning know yourself and learn how to rely on yourself. And to do that you need to practice awareness, don't you? You have to practice paying attention, observing, watching, knowing yourself. And when you go to school, say, or university, the majority of the things you learn and are taught is about the world. They want you to learn about some aspect of life out there, theories about the economy or science or medicine or literature, all kinds of knowledge based on past events, past knowledge. And it's all good to a certain extent, but they don't teach you much about yourself. You don't go to university and the lecturer says, know yourself, sit there and watch yourself. That'd be more like a Buddhist meditation course maybe, but not a university lecture or seminar or tuition or something. You wouldn't get that. And that's really one of the challenges we face living in the world. Most of the information we get is all about other people, other things, events, knowledge, which is useful for making the world better, improving things, making money, getting a job, of course. But in the midst of all that, you can completely get by not knowing yourself. As long as you can pass the exam, pass the job interview, get things done, well, fine. You might not even really know yourself very well at all, and no one teaches you that. Maybe that's one reason you might come to Buddhism, is like, there's still something missing in my life. I'm not very aware why I do get angry, why I feel sad sometimes, why I have all kinds of desires that really kind of obsess my mind, why I have problems with other people or problems with myself. I don't really know where it all comes from. So you might say part of Buddhist practice is developing self-knowledge, self-awareness, and then developing techniques for that. And that's why we emphasize a lot of meditation, or you might call mindfulness practice, mindfulness in daily life, mindfulness in meditation, because that's where you're learning to turn your attention back on yourself in a very concentrated or more intense way than normal. And you always hear people say, well, I don't need to meditate, I know myself, I know what I'm thinking, I know everything about myself. But I think if they question that a little bit, that statement, they might have to admit sometimes that they don't really know themselves, and it's most obvious when someone's stressed or suffering. Because if you really knew yourself, you wouldn't let yourself suffer or get stressed or get angry or worried. You wouldn't let that happen, would you, if you really knew your own mind? But the thing is, we don't always know our mind. We're often not aware. We're not aware of cause and effect, cause and result. Why am I feeling the way I feel? Where does it come from? If we're happy, we're not fully sure why we're happy. If we're unhappy, sad, we're not fully sure why we're sad or unhappy. So the Buddha was really encouraging us to investigate a little bit more closely ourselves as human beings. But with a kind of guideline is that we're aiming to, you might say, to improve, to find some happiness. Why not? I don't think anyone wants to suffer. So the kind of knowledge that the Buddha was encouraging us to develop is the knowledge that will help us to be more happy as human beings. Sometimes that means more peaceful, sometimes more content, but basically developing a sense of well-being. And not just on the physical level either. And, majority of people might see it that way these days. We talk a lot about health, nutrition, physical fitness, physical well-being, medical science, and all of that is well developed and continues to develop, that's a great benefit to the world. It's a good thing. But happy in the mind, maybe not so much. We're not so clear on that, are we? Because you can't just make your mind happy by buying a certain kind of food or a supplement or just going to the gym or something. You know, it may help, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we also need to look and understand about our minds a bit more closely. Maybe that's where some practice of mindfulness and meditation may come in your life. And it doesn't take very much at all to see that either. So, you know, people always ask me, if I'm going to learn meditation, how much time do I need to set aside because I'm so busy? And everyone's got their excuses why they shouldn't meditate. Well, I usually just say, just start with 10 minutes a day. Not very long. We spend more time doing our hair and brushing our teeth than we would spend meditating in one day. And certainly much more time looking at our phone than meditating. So 10 minutes is a very short period of time. But it could be life-changing. Because all you're doing is learning any technique, and there are many meditative techniques to help you develop more self-awareness, but it will be a technique that helps you to kind of look back at yourself rather than always looking out there at the world. You know, I need this to be happy and I've got to do this and do that and go here and go there, because most of our thinking is in that way. But now it's more turning backwards and saying, well, who's doing all this thinking? What is doing all this thinking? Where is it coming from? So just as we do use a mirror to check our hair and our clothes and do all that kind of stuff, now we're using just 10 minutes per day to develop the mirror of the mind. And a bit like a physical mirror where you're checking yourself and tidying things up, improving your look, the mirror of the mind does exactly the same, but with the mind. And of course it's a bit more challenging because it's not as straightforward as simply a mirror image of the physical appearance. And if the hair is out of place, you know, fix that. That's a fairly straightforward thing, even a kid can do that. The mirror of the mind is more subtle because it's invisible. So to develop some awareness through a meditative technique takes a little bit more subtlety, more effort, more sincere effort. Because you may sit there, hear the instructions, you follow the feeling of the in and out breath, for example. And you hear the instructions, you know what you've got to do, and within 2 seconds your mind is wandering away to something else. It's boring, or it just doesn't hold your attention. Or you fall asleep, or your phone rings, or something. There's always something else to take our attention away. That doesn't happen so much with the physical mirror, because you're invested in your looks. If I don't look good, they'll make fun of me at work, or if I don't look good, my partner will be upset, or I'll be upset, or whatever. Your physical appearance, you're more into that, more concerned about that. Your mind is more invisible, so even if you have really miserable thoughts, you're very depressed, very stupid, kind of silly thoughts, which we do have a lot of. You're very angry, very sad. It's invisible. No one really knows, and maybe you hardly know yourself, and it's quite easy to distract yourself from your own state of mind too. So establishing mindfulness in the way of a mirror to see your own mind, maybe it doesn't seem so important or necessary. If you can get by, if we're honest, how many days have you gone to work and you've been feeling really miserable, annoyed, afraid, worried about something, and nobody else knows, and you can still drive your car, do your job, but it's going on in your mind, and you vaguely know, but you're kind of not really doing much about it. I think we all have had that. But when you practice meditation, you're coming back to look at your mind, watch your mind. And you may notice sometimes there are pleasant thoughts or unhappy thoughts coming up, unpleasant emotional states sometimes, and sometimes very good ones, profound ones, very that are very conducive to our happiness. It can go either way, but you start to notice much more about your own mind if you practice a bit of mindfulness. It does take effort though, because your mind loves to wander away to distraction. And that's where you can't spoil it too much, as I was saying in the first part of the talk. The Buddha said to practice what he is teaching you, you can't spoil yourself or spoil someone else, give them what they want, because they'll never know their mind, and they'll just follow their habits, and maybe they'll get worse over time. Sometimes you need to give your mind a task like meditation, where you're putting your attention on one single object, and at first your mind doesn't want to do that, but then you'll start to see your own mind very clearly, because when it doesn't want to do it, it moves around, it complains, it's not peaceful. And some people misunderstand that when they meditate, because they say, oh, I'm not peaceful because of the meditation, therefore I should stop. Before I meditated, I was fine. They kind of don't see the cause and result yet, so they stop. I think a lot when I meditate, so I don't do that. Or I feel uncomfortable, so I don't do that. So they never really get beyond that point. So the Buddha said, well, number one, you need to be patient with your mind, just as you would have to be with a kid, or training an animal even. Like sometimes the Buddha would compare it to training an elephant. There may not be many elephants on Penang Island, but in the old days in the jungles not far from here, there were a lot of elephants. When I was a young monk, I met people who caught and sold elephants for a living. So I would talk to them about how they did that, and it was just like the Buddha described. They'd dig a pit in the forest, cover it with bamboo and leaves so it's hidden. They'd drive the elephants using sound, or these people would use weapons, guns and things, drive the elephants towards the pit, and then it would fall down into the pit, and it's so deep you can't get out. And then they starve it and goad it and force it to do what they want until it was more compliant. And when it's starving, it'll do anything to get food, so then they can start training it. So sometimes your mind is a bit like that. The Buddha said it's like the elephant. You might have to starve it, meaning you have to do your 10-minute meditation. That's starving the mind of everything else it wants to do. So it complains. It says, oh, I want to look at my phone, or I want to talk to my friend, or I want to sleep, or I want to listen to my music, or whatever else you might want to do. Your mind will fight, right? It'll complain. You won't want to be with the breathing at first, so you have to be very patient, be willing to starve it. And I guarantee 10 minutes of this will not kill you. You will not die. It's not the end of the world if you miss the thing you like for 10 minutes. Surely you can do that. Why can I say that? It's because you do that anyway for many other things, don't you? If you if there's a part of your job you don't really like doing, it may be much more than 10 minutes. Maybe you might do it for an hour, but you do it because you want your money and you don't want to lose your job, so you're willing to do that task. Or if you have to be with a work colleague who you don't get on with, you're willing to be with them maybe for much longer than 10 minutes because you want to get your money and do your job. Or if you're a young man dating a young woman, or a young woman dating a young man, or you go through all kinds of hardships, much longer than 10 minutes to get the person you love, or win them. So we can also do that for meditation. 10 minutes is very quick. So that's how you start training your mind, like taming the elephant. Maybe you starve it of the things it wants for 10 minutes, and you say, no, you're just going to keep coming back to the breath for 10 minutes sincerely and see what happens. A few people, the first time they try that, they get peaceful straight away. They're lucky. And they got some good karma from the past, and they actually get quiet. Most people, no. Most people will Their legs hurt, they're itchy, their mind is restless, so they have to work at it. That's why you need the patience. But if you try, and maybe do a little bit every day, or most days, for a period of time, you sooner or later you might notice you start to calm down, body and mind more relaxed, and you have a little bit more self-control, or maybe a lot more self-control. And then the next step is you start to know things about yourself, and you can see various thoughts, moods coming up as you're doing this meditation. You can see it's just a thought. I don't have to follow it or hold on to it. I can just let it go. Especially the stressful thoughts. You've got some worry about something at work or your health or something. Over and over again that worry comes up. And as you're meditating, you see, there's this worry recurring in my mind, it's suffering. But I don't actually have to do much other than just know it and not get involved with it. Just, there's that worrying thought coming up. I know it, I'll let go. And a lot of letting go is simply knowing something but not holding on, not getting involved with it. And if you don't hold on to it and build it up and sort of believe in it, you just know it because you're now a bit more mindful, that thought will tend to fade away quite quickly. It loses its energy. And that kind of insight you might get quite quickly. You say, maybe next time I'm stressed, I just go to my breath for a little while and let go of that thinking, or just remind myself that thoughts, they just arise and cease anyway. There's nothing very solid about them. And you might have a bit of insight in how to let go of stress, what we call letting go of attachment. Without going anywhere or doing anything special other than watching your mind and training or practicing in that. And you can use that in work, at home, in all kinds of situations where suddenly you've got something that can really help you. Like Ajahn Chah said, learn to be a refuge to yourself, learn to know yourself, learn to look after your own mind. Today we went out on the boat to release crabs and shellfish, just as an act of kindness, compassion. They're destined for the cooking pot, so we thought, rather than cook them, I'm sure they will be very delicious, but we'll just think more about their life, and they want to live. Every crab wants to live, you can see, because it tries to get away from you. But they also get annoyed with the fact that they've been strung up, stuck in the bucket, and they're probably annoyed with whoever caught them. But when you pick them up to release them, you have to cut the string on their claws. So their first reaction is to go for you. And their big claw comes out and they get your finger. And you have to kind of try to pull your hand off or do something. And every single crab got my finger at least once. It didn't hurt, I wasn't feeling the pain, but I just could say, you're taking your anger out on me. I understand that. I totally understand that. So I wasn't at all angry with them. I was just like, I said, hold on. In a few seconds you're going to be in the water. Just hold on. It's just like we all do. When we're angry, we've got no patience. We want to take it out on somebody or something. We're like the crab. Remember that next time you're angry. I'm just like a crab with string around it. But once you've got the string off, they grab your finger, they won't let go, they're kind of angry. There's one crab after another. I put them down on the water, over the water, and they're still holding on. And I say, look, this is your chance for freedom. And I chant the Metta Sutta. Metancha Sabaloka Saming Mana Sambhavi. It's a Buddhist chant we do, spreading thoughts of loving kindness, because that's what it was. We're trying to release them for their own benefit. And I noticed every time I chanted Metancha Sabaloka Saming, they'd let go. When they're over the water, I chanted that I never once had to actually prise the big claw off my finger. They would just let go, and then I could put them down on the water. Maybe crabs even respond to the words of the Buddha, loving kindness. But I was also thinking that's letting go when you realize if you let go, you're going to be onto something better, happier. In the case of a crab, you're going to be in the water and free. Then you're willing to let go, aren't you? Even if you're angry, like they're probably angrier with me as the representative of the human race, all these humans who have caught them and almost killed them and eaten them. They're willing to let go of their anger in that situation for freedom. And maybe the words of the Buddha, Metancha Sabaloka, just helped ease that situation, so they're willing to let go into the water, and off they go. And someone in Bangkok I know who knows all about crabs said, "Oh, Ajahn, you release all these crabs, each crab, well certainly the females, they're going to have lots of babies. Crabs have a lot of babies. You're going to populate the ocean with crabs. This is going to be good." They're very happy. I hadn't even thought about that. I haven't got that far in my thinking. I'm just going to save the crab. Apparently they will go on to have lots of babies, hopefully. But the important thing is when you're seeing that if you let go, you're going to be peaceful, happier, it's worth it, you do. So in terms of training your mind, you have to get to the point where you see that, you'll realize that, then you're willing to let go. So Dhamma practice, meditation, following the Buddhist teaching, sometimes it's a bit like going up a ladder. If you think about it, if you have a ladder to get up, say, on the roof of this house to fix something, you only can go up the ladder by stepping, but then you go to a higher rung and you leave the first rung. You let go of the first rung to go to the second, to the third, to the fourth. And then you can get to the top of the ladder by letting go of the rungs of the ladder underneath. And it's a bit like that with meditation. As with a ladder, meditation, you're often a bit nervous about doing it if you've never done before. What is mindfulness like? What is it when your mind is more mindful and aware and you can let go of things? You're not sure, but if you start practicing, almost from the first moment of meditation, you're going to be letting go, aren't you? You try to put your attention on the breath. There'll be a thought that comes up and you say, I don't need this thought now. I don't have to worry about that thing. I don't have to plan my tomorrow night's dinner party or whatever it is. I don't have to do any of that. I can just let go, and maybe that will bring me some peace and clarity. Or maybe the first time you don't know for sure, so you just try it, you risk it. You let go of the thought, you come back to the breath. Nothing happened. I didn't die. It wasn't the end of the world. Okay, maybe you can do a bit more. So you let go of a few more thoughts, come back to the breath. Maybe after a while you get it, your mind gets it, and this is good. The more I stay with the breath, the more calm, relaxed the body is, the more calm, relaxed the mind is. Because if you have mindfulness, awareness, some clarity, and what we call clear comprehension, you usually feel good because of that. It feels like you're more in control of your own mind, and you almost have more choice. Because if you're paying attention to your mind, you're aware. Sure, many negative thoughts may come up, distractions, worries, etc. But when you're mindful, there's a little bit more chance, space in the mind, space, and then there's a chance to say, no, let this go of this thought. I don't need to hold on to this. I've got enough. You actually get a feeling of peace with mindfulness. And even if you've got lots of very unpleasant thoughts, boring thoughts, different moods and stuff coming up, you can let go of them more and more as you practice this. And it's like going up these rungs of this ladder. You can actually, by letting go, your mind goes to a slightly higher place each time. It may take many times of meditation, many days, weeks, months, years, dare I say it, lifetimes. But you don't know, you don't have to think how long. That's a very kind of normal thing again, is how long before I get peaceful when I meditate? I've been meditating for 10 years and I'm still not peaceful. We sort of mumble and grumble in our mind. Try not to think too much about time. More understand the process of what's going on, this process of letting go, where you're using the breath or other techniques as well, to bring your mind to pay attention, to be aware in the present moment, to know your thinking, your feelings, your different mental activities, but then to have some choice. And some things you don't need to let go of, like mindfulness you don't need to let go of. Or maybe you have a very skillful thought arise, because that will also happen in meditation. It's not all suffering. You may also have a thought of kindness, or forgiveness, or generosity. You suddenly think, oh, there's somebody I could help, or do this. So you also have a lot of good thoughts arise, and you notice them, and you don't have to let go of them. You maybe just develop them or hold them in your mind for a while, because they tend not to bring you much suffering. They actually help you. But the thoughts and the moods that bring you suffering, well, as you're more mindful, you see them, then you let them go. And you get more confidence in yourself to do this, so then you know, oh, next time I'm stressed, I should just do a bit more of this breathing meditation, 5-10 minutes, whatever, and I may be able to let go of more stress. And it may be slow, small steps. Your ladder, the distance between the rungs of your ladder might be quite small because it's quite hard to progress up. But at least you're going in the right direction. Up, 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 up. Every moment of mindfulness is kind of helping your mind adjust, learning things, letting go of some things. So little by little these moments of mindfulness join up and bring your mind to a more higher, better place. But how long it takes, whether it's going to be one lifetime or many, we don't know. You don't have to think about that, as long as you're going in the right direction. And you're trying to improve your mindfulness, and then you're learning things from what you're doing. And you see, oh, when I get angry, I'm suffering. I'm not going to hold on to those angry thoughts again, because it was suffering. And gradually you learn some techniques. Maybe you learn how to forgive. Forgiveness, everyone knows the word, but in the beginning you you don't know, how do I do it? I just keep thinking with hatred about that person, and I can't stop, I can't let go. How do I forgive? There's a few aspects, aren't there, for forgiveness. One is you have to think about you might say the rewards or the benefits of forgiveness. You'll be free of anger. You're going to be happier. Why do you need to forgive? Well, when you can't forgive, it means you're dwelling on with anger on somebody or something. You keep thinking over and over again about them with anger. Again, it's suffering. You're going to have to learn how to not dwell or hold on to those thoughts. Then you need the mechanism. How do I do that? How do I stop holding on to those thoughts? Well, maybe you have to realize that if I keep holding on to angry thoughts, I'm suffering. If I forgive, it means I accept that person or even myself, what I've done, my mistake, my bad thing. I accept it, but I'm not just going to keep holding on to the memory and the thought about that thing or that person. I'll accept it, I'll let go, I'll move on. And if they're still angry with me, well, they're going to have to do their practice, but I'm not going to hold on to my anger. So you can forgive. And forgiveness isn't always you love the person now, from hating them, you now love them. You may still not like them, but you're no longer holding on to the hatred. You've forgiven them, you're willing to set it all aside for your own mental health. So that's another kind of letting go, forgiveness. And people can do this if they're willing to try and practice. No one's saying it's easy. Forgiveness of someone who's hurt you, it can take months, occasionally years, but it's better to do it now while you're alive than wait and try and do it on your deathbed. Which is what people do, isn't it? There's a nurse in Melbourne who did this research, because she's working in hospice care. And it's mainly anecdotes, just stories about people, but there was a little bit of research done as well. And she came up with this idea that there's 5 main areas of regret people have when they're dying, the last few days, few hours of their life. It's called the book, The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And there's some recurring themes, and one of them is hostility to another person that you've kept in your heart for a long time, often. Not just the last few minutes, not like those crabs, like they meet you and they grab your finger, but they're willing to let go because they're going to get free. That's a very short-lived hostility. Here I'm talking about 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's very common. Who? Husband, wife, parents, brother, sister, the people close to us. It's not strangers miles away. It'll be people who are close to us that maybe we've fallen out with, been hurt by, and we've just been keeping it over and over again in our mind for maybe years. That will come up when you're close to your death. Whether you like it or not, it will fill your mind. You'll have regrets, call it regret, sadness, why, maybe a feeling of unfinished business. Why did they not do this? Why did they not do that? Why didn't they apologize? Why didn't they respect me more, love me more, etc., or blah, blah, blah. The mind comes up with all this over and over again when you're very close to death. Sometimes it's ourselves. We turn on ourselves. Why didn't I do more with my life? Why didn't I do this, do that? Why did I make that mistake? So sometimes we turn on ourselves, sometimes it's another person. And it fills the mind, and it often overwhelms us. Makes it very hard to be peaceful right at the end of our life. So it's a shame, very sad. But it happens, and happens regularly, often. There are other things we regret, of course, but this is a very common one. And it's remedied by learning how to forgive, how to let go of anger through your life, not just waiting till your last minute, the last day, where it may be hard to do. You learn as you go along. So tonight, just talking a little bit about looking after the mind, getting to know yourself, learning meditation, learning to develop this mirror to reflect back on your own mind or see your own mind rather than always looking out at the world. And this is one aspect of the Buddhist practice that will help us to be happier, more peaceful as human beings. So maybe I'll leave you with those thoughts.